Jacoby Gerhardt for the rest of the season because of injuries. They started Josh Freeman one game. That was very questionable. I don't know why Minnesota would even pick up Josh Freeman. I understand that, maybe he'd do well in Tampa Bay, but I saw how he did in Tampa Bay, and it wasn't working out. He lost every game with them. Gets moved on to freaking Minnesota, and he doesn't do anything for them as well. So I think Leslie Frazier's firing. I say that it was smart. I say it was smarter than not because I think it was I think he could have stayed one more year and improved the team.
Yeah, well, the other thing is he's not the only problem. That's the other thing. It was a majority of issues that all came together. They didn't sign a number of their key wide receivers. They moved on to other teams. They brought in Greg Jennings, who wasn't a big impact because of the quarterback situation. Free agency really hurt this team, and now this is an old defense as well that is susceptible to big plays in the passing game. They don't really have a franchise rusher anymore. Jared Allen is wearing out. Leslie Frazier's out, but whoever's coming in has a lot of work to do for the Minnesota Vikings. While they didn't have the worst record with the Houston Texans, they still were an anemic offensive football team. Another team that has had its question marks in not only the passing game, but as a total offense. Cincinnati. The Bengals were coming into the year questioning whether Andy Dalton is the franchise guy. The third-year man out of Texas Christian. He threw for 33 touchdowns and only 20 picks this season, while 20 INTs does show some of the critics why Dalton has his limitations. With that electric receiving core, he still has produced some very solid numbers. Can't complain, 33 passing touchdowns. Robert, do you feel that the Bengals, in this game with San Diego, the Chargers and the Bengals from Cincinnati in Paul Brown Stadium, do you believe that Cincinnati will be able to throw the ball consistently one more time, this time in the postseason against San Diego?
Yes, I think they do, and this team really jumped out to me, 11-5. And their home record was 8-0. Pretty impressive for this team. I was impressed. The road record was a little shaky. That's what I'm going to worry about if they do make it farther in the playoffs, especially 3-5 is not the best way to go. Their division record was 3-3, and conference record was 8-4. So you look at the conference record, and I think that looks pretty strong. Andy Dalton's number, though, yeah, as you said, Nick, you can't complain. 33 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, a 61.9 completion percentage. And I thought this guy was going to be the franchise quarterback, this season because he looked impressive. I mean, over 4,200 yards in passing. And I questioned it last year because I didn't really think that he was that good until this season. He really just jumped out to everybody. He had A.J. Green that actually got 11 touchdowns and Jones who got 10. So I look at their offense and it's pretty solid. Green Ellis and Bernard have really stepped it up as well. Green Ellis averaged 3 yards a carry, and Bernard averaged 4 yards a carry. So their offense was pretty stable. And their defense, I like their defense for the last 3 to 4 years. So this team, I think, will go pretty far in the playoffs. Now, if you look at the matchup between San Diego barely made the playoffs, Nick. Your team barely made it, and I know you said in the beginning, I listened to you with Andrew Goldstein. You said this was going to be close. You said it was going to be 8-8. You were close.
Really?
I
said 8-8. Are you kidding me? I actually, towards the beginning of the year, I thought they might be a 7-9 football team, especially during that middle portion when we just looked so lethargic, especially on the defensive side. We picked it up, but Cincinnati's so powerful. We're talking A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, even Jermaine Gresham at the tight end position. Throw in Tyler Eifert, a rookie. And that running attack is so impressive. I mean, a goal line back in Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis is so impressive. I mean, he definitely doesn't have any speed, though. I'm sure has about the same 40 time as Rich Eisen. But Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis is a good goal line back. Giovanni Bernard is good outside the tackles. This is a team is so athletic. And going into this game, while you may have remembered an 8-8 prediction. I also want to add that predicting if this Bengal team gets on the board early, takes a 7, maybe even a 10-point lead, San Diego will kiss their divisional round hopes goodbye. This is a team so talented that if they capture a lead, this is a tough team to stop. However, if San Diego gets on them early, quickly goes to the passing game, or quickly gets 7 or 10 points, this may become a one-dimensional team in Cincinnati that when they're asked to pass the football, Dalton has thrown 20 picks. It's been a very inconsistent passing game. In my mind, Robert, if the Chargers get on them early, they have a realistic shot of winning against the Bengals. Do you agree?
Yes, and I look at the Chargers this year, and they slipped into the playoffs, but they made a big transition without Turner this year, and you could see the huge difference. Phillip Rivers was a lot better. You saw Matthews and Woodhead. Matthews and Woodhead did really well in the running game. And Keenan Allen was a big story this year. I was so impressed with Keenan Allen, and he has 8 touchdowns in the red zone. No one thought that he was going to be this good. And then Gates, tight end. And Nick, this Chargers team, I remember you said a year ago you were not happy with Turner whatsoever. And I can agree with that. Now this team really did change its momentum. And I see it now, and 5-3 home record, 4-4 road record. This team won some big games. Especially they beat the Broncos and the Chiefs. You beat your own division. But there was one game that really stood out to me. The latest game in NFL history against Oakland. How the Chargers could not win that game. I was a little shocked that they couldn't beat the Raiders.
Yeah, this is an inconsistent team, though. We're mentioning a limited, especially on the defensive side. The Chargers ranked 23rd, and they look even worse against the pass. This is a team that going into the offseason, win or not to Sunday morning, this is a team that will look at that defensive secondary and think, wow, after a number of years under the A.J. Smith and Norv Turner era, this team got progressively worse defensively. A team that had so little talent in the defensive secondary. We had to bring in Derek Cox, who was a former Jacksonville Jaguar, who was supposed to be our starting corner. He now basically can't even cover his own bench. This is a cornerback that is so poor in pass coverage. We're starting a whole bunch of no-name corners: Richard Marshall, Sharice Wright, Marcus Gilchrist. All of those complete no-neighbors in the Chargers secondary against A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, some of the best to ever play, especially the young up-and-coming Tyler Eifert, a rookie, who is really going to shake some heads in the future. San Diego just was in the wrong direction, and it's just such a magical story for a San Diego team with years of beleaguered franchise, especially under Norv Turner, where they couldn't win late, or they couldn't win during the middle portion of the year. They couldn't win in the postseason. It was just such an ugly run for San Diego. Glad they got out of their own funk and are on their way to the playoffs. Not the same story, however, for those San Francisco 49ers, Robert, where for a number of years they've become the formidable team in the NFC. Seattle has come up out of the hay and have stolen that division. But now at 11-5, San Francisco, in my mind, some of the better wild card teams we've seen in quite some time. An 11-win wild card team? Are you kidding? However, San Francisco's in the postseason, and after already beating Seattle, now they have to go to Green Bay and, Robert, take on those Packers.
San Francisco has had its amazing story. The Alex Smith era, 2010, they go to the NFC Championship, lose. Then going into the next season, you go with Alex Smith as your starting QB, gets hurt, bringing Colin Kaepernick that Jim Harbaugh really developed in the preseason of that season. And I believe that, Colin Kaepernick, I know we've had this discussion that Stephen Hughes hasn't liked Colin Kaepernick, and you have some good reasons why. But I think Colin Kaepernick, he can be a little bit inconsistent, but I think this guy could get the job done. And the last 3 meetings, the Niners have beat the Green Bay Packers, so I'm feeling pretty confident the Niners can get it done. Even in cold weather, in 10 degrees, can still get it done. And this team, I would say that this has been some of their best offense, because you go with Vernon Davis, who's been there for years. I thought he was going to be done after Michael Singletary. because he got in so much arguments with him, but stuck around, and he's had a great career in SF. I also go with Michael Crabtree, a man that got hurt and that's been hurt and finally comes back in the end of the season and is really proving himself. In a story, Anquan Bolden, a man that really had to rely on him for the whole offense this year because Vernon Davis had injury issues. Quinn Patton wasn't really the guy at the wide receiver position, and Anquan Bolden was pretty much the main target for that offense. And what some teams figured out is that he was the only weapon, so they double covered him every time. That first week at Green Bay was his best game yet. And I want to see him have another great game against Green Bay.
Yeah, Robert Dieter is joining us here for NFL Wildcard Predictions. The Niners, such a potent offense. There's not a lot going into just how impressive that transition from the Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick era, how seamless that was. This team never missed a beat. And now, defensively, there are so many teams that could, or players that could play on the All-Pro team in the coming years. This is just such a powerful defensive unit. Even a guy like Patrick Willis isn't even the top linebacker on that team. Even Navarro Bowman arguably was the better performer this year. I don't know how to explain exactly how impressive San Francisco has been at acquiring players just out of their that were on the street, and they become superstars. However, look no further than Green Bay for a similar story as well. James Starks is becoming the cognate in that backfield. He was on the streets in 2009, comes in, is back in the free agent market after the 2011 season, comes back one more time. Him and Eddie Lacy have become one of the most potent two-back duos in the league today. What to make, Robert, of these two teams where running the football, playing defense, smash mouth, something completely contrasting the rest of the league where most of the NFL loves to throw it early and often. These two teams, smash mouth, run the football, play some defense, and they have, to the chagrin of the rest of the NFL, they have won early and often with that formula.
But you also look at the Niners formula as well. Their running game has been impressive. You got Frank Gore, who has, he's had an amazing season, 9 touchdowns. And his longest run was 51, and that was against Seattle. Seattle couldn't stop him in that running game at all. But you also have two guys that are going to be stepping up sooner or later. You got Kendall Hunter and LaMichael James coming in, and Kendall Hunter, he had 78 carries this year, and I think Kendall Hunter is going to be getting more and more carries as next season goes. But you look at Frank Gore, and Frank Gore has been a beast all season long. He hasn't really dealt with injuries whatsoever. He's played every game this season. Even if he limps off the field, which he always does. I don't know why, but he always limps off the field and then comes back in the game because he's so tough. But, I didn't think Eddie Lacy was going to be that good. And I didn't think that this running game would have been what it has been today. And Eddie Lacy has proven me wrong. And he's gotten 284 carries, more than Frank Gore, over 1,000 yards rushing, and averaged 4 yards a carry for 11 touchdowns. And, you can arguably say that he could be one of the Rookie of the Years of how big, the O-line hasn't been that great.
Yeah, you know what? Another team that also has proven me wrong off of a offensive line that really isn't that good is the Philadelphia Eagles. Your thoughts, Robert, on just how this Chip Kelly era has turned into, from what at the beginning of the year was a disaster for the Eagles, has now turned it around, written the ship. They're 10-6. They won the NFC East with a win last week and faced the Saints at home in frigid conditions where New Orleans historically has played very poor, especially look at that 3-5 road record where the Saints at home 35 points per game, on the road 17. Do you think the Saints have a chance?
The Saints do have a chance. I think they have the upper hand in this game. They have more playoff experience. I don't think the Eagles are even ready for the playoffs yet, but I still